So there are many videos online about playing jazz piano or blues piano, where you've got lots and lots of scales. And you've got all of that stuff. It's all quite sort of deep theory. But what about if you're playing maybe for a sax player or a singer and you've got to accompany? Now, this is something that pianists don't usually do. Actually, being an accompanist is really hard. It's just about being sympathetic to what's happening above you, as it were, in pitch or volume. So I'm going to demonstrate a blues in C and talk a bit about the chords and the bass and how you divide the work up to make a nice accompaniment that something can sit over the top of. Let's have a look. Okay, so the theory basically goes that the blues has 3 chords. So if we're in C, that's chord 1. There's my C7, C, E, G and B flat. And then F7 and G7. So those are my 3 chords. So the basic thing that I could do would be something like that. It doesn't sound all that good. Now, one reason it doesn't sound all that good is that I'm playing the same rhythm in both hands. I'm also moving like this. We want to try and avoid that. Sure, the left hand is going to have to move because there's only one particular bass note, but I could change the order of the notes in my chords to make them actually gel, or they have basically an inversion of each other. So C7 and F7, they're the same sort of shape on the piano. But what about if I was to do this? So this time I've got my C7, I've got my F7, but I took these 2 notes and put them down an octave. So you're kind of looking to see if you can keep notes, and if you can, great. If not, where are the closest ones? So C, 7, F7 and G7. They're all within an octave range now, whereas before they were an octave and a fourth away. That sort of extent of having C7 and G7. So I can have C7, F7 and G7. Really, and that means I can look at the camera and do it. Whereas if I move up, I have to feel my way around. So not only is it actually sort of sonically more pleasing, it's actually easier to play in the long run. So there's my chord of C7. Now the bass player is usually going to have the root and the fifth quite a lot of the time. That sort of thing. Which means that I can take them away in this hand. Now that's quite high in terms of pitch. If you've got a sax player who's playing around here, or something like that, put it down an octave. That just makes it sound a bit sort of darker, a bit more in the background, which is what you want when you're comping, when you're accompanying somebody else. Do something like that as an accompaniment. So you've got your root and the fifth and then your C7 chord. And then to F7. Now, the useful bit here is that C7, which is E and B flat, turns into F7 by just taking both of those chords down, the notes down a semitone. So we've got E flat and A, then back to E and B flat for C7. And then G7, F and B. So I'll just rewind with that. That, F7, that is, take away the root and the fifth, that's the fifth and the root, leaving you A and E flat. But I can turn these round. So that's F7, whereas C7 was this. So F7 and G7 and C7, they are all right next to each other. This is really convenient because it also means your harmony is the sort of the glue between your bass line and the solo. So it's all nice and sort of, it's just keeping things in check. So my standard 12-bar blues has 4 of the chord 1 of C7, 4 bars. Then it goes to F7 for 2 bars, then back to C7 for 2 bars. Then you have a bar of G7, a bar of F7, returning to 2 bars of C7, and that's your 12-bar blues. That's the most basic one. So depending on the tempo of the blues, if I've got... There's my whole bar now, so it's quite a long time there. I can actually make bar 2, I can make the second bar, bar 4. And then return to C7 for 2 bars. It just relieves the monotony of that 4 bars of just C7. So you've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. You just make the second bar F7 and keep the rest as C. So there is your sort of a very basic bass line there. Now, there's nothing to stop you actually using the notes of C7 in your bass line. But you've already got it here, so maybe we could add the 6th. Like that. I also added the 3rd, but I could take that away, just leaving my root in the 5th and the 6th. It's actually the basis of that sort of boogie woogie where you can have this. So let's go to F now. Now, at the end of a blues, you'd have a little turnaround if you're going back round to the beginning, because if we've got our 12-bar blues of 4C, 2F, 2C, G, F, and 2C at the end, they're going to come round to another 4 bars of C. That's 6 bars of C. Well, we'd like to have something that sort of turns that blues around. So there's quite a nice little riff that you can have, which does this. So in the particular key, you start off with 2 last fingers, and then you have the middle parts just moving between those. So you hold these, so far everything in the middle has moved down a semitone each time. We've got the B flat, which is our 7th, we've got the E, which is our 3rd, so there's your bar of C7. Chord of C7. I've also added the 5th here because it's not here. And then just resolves to a major chord of C. And then a little 5th at the end. There's my G7. You can create a rhythm as well. That kind of thing. You can actually have this. Just have something basic there. So putting all of this together then, we can actually have little chromatic notes as well between the notes when you're moving between chords. This gives rise to something called a tritone substitution. You think, oh no! It's a very long name to describe the fact that C7 and F sharp 7 are the same chord. Now the theory with that is that you've got the third and the seventh there, gives you C7. But in F sharp 7, you've got the third and the seventh, or the seventh and the third. So the whole thing turns around. So you've got C7, which has got third and seventh, and then you've got the seventh and third for F sharp. So, which conveniently goes down a semitone to our next chord. Lots of this is also about volume. I'm being really light here, and actually this is kind of what you want. You want a snappy but really, really gentle. Just keep it really simple, because then your soloist can do all their flowery stuff over it, and it's not going to get in the way. Now, the other thing that I just touched on there was any of these 7 chords. There's my C7, so I've moved the root and the fifth down an octave, because that's where the bass is. This means that my right hand is only playing 2 notes now, which means I can add more stuff. The 9th note is going to work really well, and you think, well, why is it called the 9th? It's only the 2nd. Well, it's called the 9th if the 7th is also included. So C9 is that. If there was no 7th there, and I just had a C chord with a 9 here, it's called an add 9. So C9 and C add 9 are different. C9, the 7th has to be there. C add 9, it's not there. So you can have the C9 like that. Now F7 is this, but the 9th of F is a G. You can play with the order of these notes. So actually C9 to F9 would be better like that. G9, so that's G7. You add the 9th above your bass note of G, so you have some 9th chords now. For the sort of scope of blues comping, you probably wouldn't add much more than that, because you can actually add the sharp 11 and the 13 as well. There's my 9. Sharp 11 and 13. Now, of course, that takes 2 hands to play all those notes. And you think, well, if you get rid of the root and the fifth and stick them in the bass, you can actually have all of those notes in your right hand. Third, sharp 11, 13, 7 and 9. Starts just to get sort of musical Sudoku. It's like, gets right in your way. So you're better off just practicing. if I'm going to put that turnaround in, I'll put something like that before I then go back home, as it were. Now, what you can do is you can attend to the bass and the chord actually with the same hand. This is called stride piano, where you have a bass chord, bass chord, bass chord, which allows you to play some solo stuff. That kind of thing, and then you'd sort of do the same for your other chords. And there we are. There's a little thing about blues comping on the piano, and if you keep the touch really light, people are going to absolutely love what you do.